Good evening, everyone, and welcome again to our podcast, How the Culture Gets It Wrong. It's a podcast on dating, sex, and relationship insights with myself, Andre Paradis, and my lovely assistant, Tess Listic.
Hi, everyone.
Tess in the house. My wife, Nancy.
Hi, everyone.
Who's joining us. And this evening, we'll have a guest star all the way from Utah, my friend Annadel Lemon. Annadel, say hello.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Very good.
Awesome.
The power of the internet. Isn't that cool?
Utah.
Utah,
Oh, my
for God's sakes. And we get some really, really good insights tonight with really interesting, juicy conversation about, how the culture gets it wrong. So the topic of this evening's podcast is why playing victim is a loser's game.
Wow.
I mean, because right now in our culture, it's really absolutely freaking everywhere, right? Yeah. Everybody is a victim. If you're not a white male like me, you're a victim. Like, right? Annadel?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
You said women's movement, like colored people, like.
Everybody seems to be victims right now.
And it's really, really, really pathetic because victimhood, from the top, the idea when you're a victim, there's a lot of power in that, or there's a lot of attention that you get from that, right? Like, oh, you poor thing, oh, that's horrible, you poor thing, right? However, this really gets you absolutely nowhere. That's all it gets you. It gets you attention and and a lot of empathy, but ultimately you end up with doing absolutely nothing because you need to actually grab your boots by their straps, pull them up, and then get something done. If you're going to be a victim, nothing gets done, and you're a loser the rest of your life. That's not sexy. That is not sexy. So, Annadel, the reason why Annadel is, on the show tonight is because your life, your story just floored me when I met you. Was that 2 years ago?
Yeah, it's been about 2 years now, I think. Yep.
So if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit, are we talking about victimhood and somebody who should be a victim, you, who you're not, but get the calibration here for the audience. Check this story out. So if you go ahead, please, just tell us a little bit about your life, starting from, childhood.
Okay, so when I was a child, my father was pretty much an alcoholic the entire time that I can remember, from being very small all the way up until I can remember all the way. He's always drinking. When he wasn't working, he was drunk, and so there was either working or drunk. And so we would do things as a family, but it always involved them, my parents being drunk and the kids just sort of doing their own thing. When I was about 14 years old, my parents, it had kind of gotten to a point where my mother was ready to file for divorce from him. He had started becoming abusive again. He was abusive early in their marriage. It hadn't happened for a while. He started becoming a little bit abusive again. So she was ready to file for divorce, and it kind of got really bad at that point. And so my father, she went through the divorce process. And so I just remember one night, it was, I even remember the date. It was December 30th, 1982. And I was 15 years old at the time, and I was spending the night with my friend, and it was late at night, we were doing the Jane Fonda workout. Some of the audience members might remember Jane Fonda, the leg warmers, the French cut leotard. She was pretty awesome at the time, pretty hot. So we were doing this workout. I was really jealous because she had the new VHS tape, and we were doing this video. And there was this knock on the door, and it was 10 o'clock at night. And so, back in that day, we answered the door when people knocked. Now we hide and try to see who it is first before we open it. But we opened the door, and there was a police officer standing at the door, and he was there to see me. And he came in and told me I had to sit down. And so I sat down, and he told me that my father had shot my mother, and she didn't make it. And so me being this kid I'm 15 years old, and how do you handle something like this? And looking back, I'm not sure how I even did it at that exact moment. But my friend's mom took me to the hospital where my older sister was, and my younger brother, who, by the way, my younger brother actually found my mother. She was shot through the window in our apartment. So we were all there together. The police told us that we needed to make sure we stayed away from the windows. They weren't sure where he was at and what he would do to us. Come to find out, the next morning we did get notification that he had killed himself as well, and he had put a hose from the exhaust into his truck and killed himself that way.
Wow.
When later on they did find a suicide note that stated, if we can't, or maybe we'll be together in the next life. And so I think maybe that's something clicked in his head, thought, oh, well, if we can't be together now, I'll just take her with me and we'll be together. And so that was, something that I've kind of thought about since then.
Yeah. So 15 years old, life is over as you know it, right? So where do you go live and what happens next in a nutshell?
So my sister was married. She was, young married. She was only 19. She was pregnant with her first child. And so my brother and I went and lived with her. And, that's hard because she's barely older than I am. Right. And so that's where we ended up living for a lot of our years. My brother did end up going and living with a friend because he wasn't getting along with my brother-in-law. There was a lot of fighting there. So he went and lived with a friend and his family. But I lived with them until I graduated from high school, and from that point I was pretty much on my own as far as, financially and everything like that, because, that's kind of where I was. So
sure. I'm choking here.
I'm
choking.
Yeah. No words.
So how do you not become a victim from that? How do you go through life with a sense of belonging and or deserving of anything, with that? I'm trying to get my brain around it and I can't. But you're here and you have a good life, so you did.
Yeah, I have an amazing life. I'm happy and things are great. I really feel like from the beginning, it took some time, and it's been a process through the last 35 years for me to be able to get through this. But I think from the beginning, there was a sense that I do remember actually when I was in high school, I was on a date with this guy, and he kind of asked me, so how did you get through this? How have you been able to get through it? And at that moment, I said, if I hadn't gone through what I went through, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now, which, I was still in high school, but I realized then that my life probably was not on a great path at that moment. And so I just, even at that time, even a few years later, even a couple years later, I realized that I was in a better situation, even though I was close to my mother and I missed her, and it would have been great to have her in my life. And even today, with my kids don't know their grandmother, but I still think, my life, even back then, was on a better path than it would have been had it not happened.
Wow. And I think I get that, obviously, because it would have got worse and worse, and at least that stopped. And then you didn't get stuck there. Was there? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but there has to be, from my perspective anyway, some place where you made a decision like, this will never be my life. I will never, like, there has to be some kind of, that kind of pull somewhere inspired inside of you. There had to be. Am I right? Again, don't want to put words in your mouth.
There, as I've thought about this a lot, obviously, throughout my life, and I think it's just been such a gradual thing for me that there was never this light bulb that said, that's never going to happen to me. That's not going to be me. But I think as time went on, there were just little things throughout my life that I realized I don't have to let this keep me down. I can rise above it. I don't have to be the people that my parents were. I don't have to be that way, and I can move forward, and I can be a better person. And I don't really feel like I have an addictive personality, and I don't know how I got away from that because I hear it's hereditary or it's in the genes.
Genetics.
Yeah, that's great.
I don't really have an addictive personality, so that didn't get me. But it just was those little things that as life progressed that I realized that I didn't have to stay in that spot.
Well, see, from my perspective, these are huge things, right? Like, I could do better. I'm not a victim of my circumstances. I will not, and these are like, you just said 5 of them. And like, those were huge moments of life decisions of, this is not going to be defining me as a person. I will conquer and go through this and, live my life. I mean, but if you don't do this is where everything collapses, right? Because you get stuck in the pain, you get stuck in the poor me, you get stuck in the victimhood, which is, again, this podcast is about how the culture gets it wrong. This damn victimhood bullshit is everywhere because, you're a victim because you're a woman? Really? Really?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck is that? I mean, sorry, like, in this world, you're not in Saudi Arabia. You're in, United States of America. How are you a victim as a woman? Like, ladies, I'd like to know. You know what I mean? Like, this is just one, right? Because there's 50 of them, right? Pick a color, pick a gender, right? Sick of it because all it does is disempower people from stepping into where they could be in the world.
Right, absolutely. And I feel like as I went through this throughout my life, like I said, it took me years and years and years. And there's even some days now that I'm still working through a few things. But,
sure.
It went from me thinking, I'm grateful for where I am now to going through a real forgiveness process with my father a few years later. It was maybe about 10 years ago when I really went through this forgiveness process with him, where I do this exercise where I call it, talking to a tree, but I didn't have a tree at the time. I just talk out loud to his spirit and just tell him, everything that I was pissed off about and why I was pissed off and all of these things. And then, get to the point where you meet them where they're at. And I say, you know what? I understand why you did the things that you did. It's not okay. But I know that, and I was really pissed at the time. I'm like, I know that alcohol just jacked up your brain all these years and all that. And so there's just that process that I went through at that moment. I remember it was one night in a hotel when I was doing some training. And just that was another step in that process of me being able to completely let go. Even though years prior I felt like, I had moved past it, but maybe not necessarily at full forgiveness.
You want to talk about the bit that you and I did? Because, I like it because, I was part of that.
Yeah.
I mean, really. And it was like completely unplanned.
We were at a conference, a seminar.
It was a networking event. It was a big network.
Yeah, that's right. A networking event. And we had both gone out to use the little boys and girls room at different times, but then met out in the hallway. And just prior to this, we were talking about some blocks that I had with being able to visualize. Do you remember that part, Andre?
Yes, of course.
So I couldn't quite visualize. They asked us to visualize a kitchen. I remember this vividly, and I couldn't visualize a kitchen. The only one I could visualize was my grandmother's kitchen vividly. And then we kind of came to the conclusion that it was right at the time that this all happened with my parents is when I was not able to visualize anything past that. Mm-hmm. So it was, so I can't, even today I have a hard time with visualization. Like I can say, yeah, I'll picture an orange, but I know what it looks like, but I can't see it. Mm-hmm. But I saw this kitchen vividly in my grandmother's kitchen. So that was where the process started. And then once we met in the hallway and we had talked about, some of these blocks that I had, Andre came up to me and he said, I really feel like I need to tell you that something happened in your father's life when he was about 10 years old that really caused him to be able to do the drinking and to be the way that he is. And I absolutely broke down because that was the last piece that I needed to fully be able to have an understanding. And again, not that it makes it okay. And I think you said that, Andre. Yeah. Not that it makes it okay, but some kind of a reasoning and just a feeling that was the reason. And I mean, I think we just sat there and I cried and we hugged. And
Do you remember that I told you that he'd been? I don't know how to say this without being weird, or if you don't believe in this stuff, I can't do anything about it. But he was at me all afternoon. He was at me all afternoon to tell you this. He was at me all afternoon. I couldn't shake it. That's why when I ran to you in the hallway, it had to happen. I just so.
I did not know that part.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, but I really appreciate you doing that and having the courage to do that for me. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. I had no choice. He was yelling at me.
Wow.
It was
You were
very
the
weird.
messenger.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
whew, so oh my goodness. So, okay. Continuing on. So that was like, a moment in life as far as forgiveness, because we know the reason why people get stuck often in victimhood is because they think if they forgive the offender, the event, whatever, they think that it's saying that it's okay that they did that. It's okay, you know what I mean? Like, 'cause forgiveness. So people think it's saying, well, it's okay that you beat me up because, I forgive you. It's not. That's not it at all. Forgiveness is like to release them from you. You know what I mean? It's not okay what they did. It's not okay what happened. But forgiveness means I'm not going to pay for it anymore. I would let that go, and that's what you did that day. Last piece, fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now, funny enough, I need to talk about this. So, by the way, Annadel, tell us how many the audience. Tell us how many kids you have, because you have 2 marriages. Just so people get a grasp on this woman who should have been a victim and a loser,
Amazing.
and everything else you could say about somebody who goes through something like this. Go ahead, just take it home.
So sometimes I like to say I have 9 kids and not explain it, because people are like, "Oh, wow."
But you have 9 kids.
I have
Straight
9
up.
kids. Okay,
Yeah,
we have a his, mine, and ours. So my husband has 3 boys. I have 3 kids, and then we have adopted 3 kids from Ethiopia.
So
It was about 6.5, 7 years ago. They came at different times during that time. So yeah.
So 6 white kids and 3 black kids in the house. Hello.
Yes.
Talk about multicultural. I like
They're
it.
not all in the house.
My point is, those are your kids. Are you raising them? Am I right?
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
So we know the first marriage. We know what happened. The audience doesn't know. I'm just going to nutshell it just so we get pushed forward. That you were a woman, and we talked about this. The psychology of a little girl raised with a parent, a father especially, who is an alcoholic, not safe. A woman has to make her own safety. So little girls who don't have safety in their lives when they're little grow up to be masculine. They have to. It's not a choice. It's just a survival instinct that kicks in. So we know that this happened to you. We just talked about this earlier. And then you end up like pushing your life, through this with your masculine energy, which is obviously what made you survive and thrive, right? But then you brought that into your first marriage, right? And then and we talked about this because it was a good marriage. 17 years is a long time with 3 kids. And however, because you were the masculine energy, and I'm telling the ladies as well because they know, you're the masculine energy. Ultimately, you lost respect for him, who would not really basically like hold you back. Say a little bit more of that, because I want to take that home for the audience.
Right. So and like we talked about earlier, I feel like I was kind of the a-hole in the marriage. However, you're right. I would do things. I feel like I would do things to try to see if he would try and stop me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would go out with my friends and go clubbing with my friends. I would, and just do things that probably were not appropriate for me to go as a married woman. Even though I wasn't doing anything necessarily, but I was out clubbing. Okay, so and so I wanted him to say, "Hey, I want you to stay home with me," or "How about we go out to the club together?" Never happened. And so I just kept pushing until I, like you said, I kind of lost respect, and I got a little bit like, and didn't really care about it anymore. And so I'm like, I do what I want when I want to do it. And I was also like the main breadwinner in the house. And so that was, I guess I felt there was a lot of pressure on me. And so I was going to do what I wanted to do and when I wanted to do it. And there was nobody to tell me not to.
Which is funny because that's exactly what men say. Uh-huh. That's the definition of masculine. I do what I want when I want to do it. I don't have to explain it to anybody, and I don't care how you feel about it. Now, I'm not saying I'm not putting you down. You know what I mean? It's sort of how you had to show up to survive. However, those relationship with man, so basically you were more, masculine, pushing, conquering energy. He was more like passive, patient, right? Let you do whatever you want to do, more feminine. These work because we need one of each for any relationship to work. However, eventually they fall apart. You lose respect for him, and you basically become his mother, which he can't stand. Voila. So, but fantastic. So this is where I got you to say all this because I want to get here, which with me is even juicier. So you go from being, masculine, in charge, conquering, taking care of yourself, making the money, like save, right? Marriage fails because you lose respect. Totally get it. It's always the same story, by the way. Now, marriage number 2, that all change. I'm very, very curious because you're the story of my clients, my lady clients who cannot come off that track, right? Get stuck on that track, because when you're masculine for many, 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 many years, women completely lose access to vulnerability, letting go, let him take charge, relaxing into that, which is feminine, and sort of not controlling anything and just go with the flow. Right? Like it's very hard to do when you haven't done it for 35 years or so, or the fact that if that could kill you, because you can't control anything from there, right? So how did that happen? I want to hear.
Okay, so just so you know, it wasn't overnight, right?
Of course. Of course
here
not.
I am.
Yeah.
And everything's changed.
I'm going to guess it had a lot to do with the man that showed up.
So it was. So it was my man, and he did take charge, and he did make me feel like he wanted me to be with him, and he wanted to take care of me, and he wanted to be that man that I needed him to be. It still was some work on my part to back off and to allow that to happen. And even some days, even now, it's still some work, but I always want to allow him to be that caretaker for me and it does. It's a very safe place, and it's very much less chaotic, a lot less chaotic than it was in my first marriage, where I felt like there was a lot of pressure to just always be stepping up and always be doing, always being the person that's doing. And so it's been relaxing, a little stressful also, because I'm trying to move myself out of that masculine energy as much as I had. But, it was my man who stepped up and was the one who really made me feel like I'm safe and I don't have to
control
be the guy. I don't have to have that masculine energy anymore.
Wow. I mean, that's again the impossible. Really. I mean, people hire me to do this with them because they don't even get it. Then you just go and do it. Really? Really? That's amazing. That's fantastic. So,
yeah.
Oh my goodness, ladies, anything you want to ask Annadel? She's amazing.
Like my jaw is just open.
Right?
I know.
Face wide open.
Yeah.
I just think that, you've been through so much, but with everything, you've just had this way of coming out of it. And that's really, really incredible to hear and really inspiring too.
If you just met her,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Totally.
Her energy is exact opposite of what a victim would be.
Right.
So speaking of victim again, you got, you have 3 children that are black in a society where everyone's a victim. So I know, how do you manage that with them, that they don't fall into the trap of, you're a girl, you're black, you're small, you're bad, you're big, you're fat, so tell us your recipe, because I know some goodies right here.
Okay. Well, I always tell my kids that they are not victims because of the color of their skin. In our culture right now, there are so many people who want to look at them, and even in the adoption community, there are people who are constantly talking white privilege and everyone's racist, and they have to have special attention, and everybody has to walk on eggshells because these kids are of color. And I tell my kids, I said, you have got the same opportunities. Do not ever let anyone tell you that you're a victim because of the color of your skin. That is not okay. You guys have amazing talents. Use your talents. Rise above everything that people are trying to tell you because you're a child of color, a person of color. You have got all of the opportunities in the world right in front of you. You have the same exact opportunities that I have, maybe even more sometimes with, they have with diversity,
Yep.
Yeah. So I always tell them that, if there's anybody that, and even when they're talking, on the radio about certain things, I'm like, you know what, kids, absolutely not. You are not victims. You are amazing. You are capable and awesome. So I just try to keep that in the forefront of their minds.
Well, because if it was really truly, like the case in our culture, then explain to me Oprah Winfrey. Explain to me, Maya Angelou. Explain to me Berry Gordy. Explain to me, you know what I mean? Like these people who have had horrible, horrible lives, and then managed to like take over the world. Oprah Winfrey is the richest woman in the world. She was like raped at the moment she was 11 years old over and over by cousins and their friends. Had a baby at 14, and the baby died at 15 or something, like didn't survive, but was alive for like months. And, like, and then this is the inspiring thing. Same thing with Maya Angelou. I don't know if you guys know the story. Maya was, her parents were divorced. She was living with her mom and her boyfriend. And what happened is her mom's boyfriend molested her.
Oh, God.
She was 7 years old, I believe. So what happened is eventually she didn't tell anybody. She went quiet. Yeah. She didn't tell anybody. And then she ended up telling her uncle about this. Her uncle came back and killed the boyfriend. She did not speak for 5 years after that. Not one word.
Literally didn't speak.
Did not speak one word for 5 years because her words got this man killed in front of her, I think. Right? So, like, talk about trauma, right? Now, the one thing, and I want you to bring that up, Annadel, the one way that Oprah survived and became Oprah Winfrey, same with Maya Angelou, is they started reading at a very early age, right?
Amazing.
Now, reading, we know this, right? Reading expands your mind. Reading expands your imagination. You go in adventures in your mind when you read, stories and books and reading. And then this is how these people who are not victim dive into the world of reading and learning and finding their way out of that. Annadel?
Yeah, there's the other story of Ben Carson, who was the pediatric neurologist, and his mother also made him and his brother read, and then he became who he is just from his mother's example. So, I try to make sure my kids are reading as well. Sometimes they're not very cooperative. One thing I do with them is I pay them $20 to finish like a success book. Anytime they finish a success book,
Wow.
I give them $20.
Nice.
That's a good idea.
Incentive right
They
there.
don't get paid for
Perfect.
chores or anything like that because they live in my house. But
Right.
if they finish a success book and write me a report, then I give them $20. And I think that's well worth the $20 if they are learning something from those books.
Well, yeah, to expand their minds, and I realize the same thing with my kids. Like, it's hard because it's, video games are so much more fun than the TV and everything else, because it seems so, like, is that the word mundane? To read a book, it's so passive. It's just sit there with a book, like you know what I mean? Like, but it's what it does to your imagination, your brain. You know what I mean? And opens your world up to everything.
Yeah.
So, this is the magic. This is the way out of victimhood, by the way, right? You could like cocoon yourself in the fact that belong to this group or that group or this group and that group, and all of you are just have it so badly, but you hold it together, or you come together just sort of get some kind of social power, which really gives you nothing, or you could grab your bootstraps, you know what I mean, pull and find your way in the world, because every one of us was here and are born with a mission and something to accomplish, something to change the world with. And if you don't do it, you're just wasting your life, which is the topic of our podcast. It's a loser's game. So, Tess, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, Annadel, what advice would you give listeners right now who maybe have gone through something like that, or anything,
something traumatic.
Something traumatic, yeah. Whether it's reading or what do you have to say about this?
Well, I usually tell the clients that I work with that that they don't have to live in their victimhood, and they need to face their victim, whatever this, if it's a circumstance or if it's a person. And I don't necessarily even say face them face to face, but face that situation and just basically say, I am not going to give you my power any longer. I am taking back my power, and I am not living as a victim anymore. And I am moving forward from this point, and I am not going to stay in that victimhood any longer. And when you can really embrace that and really feel that in your heart, you will be able to get past the crap that you've been through. It's not going to be an easy process, but dang, it's really, really worth it once you step out of that victimhood.
Wow. Put a lid on that. That's fantastic. So, just for the audience, because we haven't gone there, though, what is it you do, and, how do people get a hold of you and what you do?
Well, I help people who have experienced trauma get past their victimhood and be able to find the forgiveness for the situation or the person that has victimized them, I guess, in a sense. People do get victimized, but they don't have to stay and live in that victimhood forever. And so I help people and I coach them through that process and being able to figure out how it is that they're going to find the forgiveness, love, and kindness to move forward.
Fantastic.
That's awesome.
So you have a website, you have a phone number, you can give us all of it, because this is going all over the place. Bring it.
I do.
Show off.
I have a website. My website is called thefreedomwarrior.com, and I got that name because I feel like we all have a warrior inside of us, and we can pull that out. And when we're a warrior, we're not a victim. We're constantly fighting for truth and justice, and just being able to be super awesome all the way around. So thefreedomwarrior.com, and my phone number, if you want that, is 801-390-8056. And you can call me there, leave me a message, text me, whatever, if you're interested in learning more.
Fantastic.
Nice.
Mountain time. Yes. Well, drop the mic. I'm done.
That was really incredible.
This is how you do it. Fantastic.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Annadel, thank you so much for joining
you.
us. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing this with us and inspiring the world and people who are listening. Tess, thank you so much. Babe, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
On this note,
Yeah.
Tess, how do people find us on the flip
Sure.
side?
So the Facebook page is Project Equinox with Andre Paradis. We have content on there constantly, and the website is projectequinox.net. We have blog, like written material. We have little YouTube clips and audio clips as well. This is also where you can find Andre's number for coaching. That's his big thing, is coaching, and also just events, public speaking events, and you can contact him via email also as well.
Fantastic. On this note, thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And to our audience, thank you for listening.
Yeah.
And until next week.
Till next week.
Good night.